I had to leave my partner recently. He started being violent towards me. Came out of nowhere. We've been together years. I mean, I know he struggled with anxiety after we had a car accident, but well, it just didn't seem to get any better. Then he started getting irritated even by little things, and one night I must have said the wrong thing, and he just went for me. That was the first time. I've had to really toughen up, especially when it comes to men. Take the nonsense, make sure people know I can look after myself. People sometimes ask me what I prefer of all the things I do, but what I always like the best is what I'm doing at that moment. So if I'm writing a play or a novel or poetry, and when I'm writing, that's my favourite thing in the world. When I'm acting on stage in a serious play, that's my favourite thing. If I'm doing stand-up comedy, at that point, that's my favourite thing. So it's a sort of like no-lose situation, really. I suppose how I got into doing all this in the first place was purely as a thing of need when it was at the tail end of having suffered some really extreme bullying in the health service, and one day I just wanted to write down some of my feelings about this one particular woman, and it was a bit of prose that I just wanted to write down just to sort of like get it out of my head. And when I read it back, to me it felt like it had been quite creative and positive, or the things I said weren't particularly positive, but it had felt like a creative process. So then I started to write more creative bits of prose and poetry, but at the time it was absolutely, completely for me, it wasn't needed to or intended to be shared with anybody else.
So it was a personal reaction?
It was, yeah. I mean, I'd always written poetry and stories from when I was a child. I'd always done that. When I was on maternity leave with my youngest, I wrote all 4 of my children their own separate stories, and again, it was just something to do, never anything I thought was a particular career move. And that, yeah, I found writing poetry particularly, how I always explain it. For me, I got a lot of stuff in my head around the bullying that was very distressing, and that was the sort of nauseating thing. And to write it down was a bit like, and it always sounds a bit gross, but it was a bit like, you know, purging, being sick, getting it, and I got it out and onto the paper, and that felt like it was a release and a relief. But as well, I then kept the words. It wasn't, there was a couple of things that I wrote symbolically, which I wrote, and then I burnt them. Kind of like a spiritual thing of, you get rid of the energy, it's gone now. Write it all down on bits of paper or on a bit of paper, and then destroy it, and it's gone. So if somebody feels I'm worthless, I'll never achieve anything, write all that stuff down and then burn it, and it kind of gets rid of, you've got it out of there onto there. And I think it's one of the, for me it was healthy to do that and then move on. I think if I'd still been stuck just writing about that now, it may not be particularly healthy for me personally. And then I don't know at what point I thought it might be useful for other people to share some of the stuff, because all the stuff I wrote initially was all around bullying. I got quite interested. It amused me to see how many different things and ways I could write, which was all about the same subject, which was about the horror of adult bullying and the sort of the power games. So I wrote plays and short stories and poetry and scripts. But a lot of the key stuff that I initially wrote about the bullying, I at some point, and I like I said, I don't really know what it was. It's a bit like how has happened to me a lot since experience, where something comes from someone, I just go with it. Like the day I decided to resign, I'd been agonising and going in circles for weeks, and I just got so exhausted with it that I can't think about this anymore. And I went to bed, went to sleep, and when I woke up in the morning, it's just like, what I need to do is just have my notes in, and I just did it, and I've never looked back from that. And with the same sort of thing with the my writing, I thought maybe it might be useful or helpful to other people, really. So I looked at getting it published, and I've had some things published and done a bit of touring with some of the poetry, and it has resonated with people, because especially when it was happening to me, it was a lot less in the media about adult bullying. It was, and I didn't, for about 2 years after I left work, I used to just tell people I'd got disillusioned and left, because I just thought if I tell them I've been bullied, they will have no understanding of what that, even how can you as an adult woman in charge of a regional unit have been bullied. It's not going to make sense to people. And it has been quite fulfilling for me to have people who've read my stuff say, I didn't think anyone else felt like that, because I put my first book that I had published was very dark. There was a lot of really dark stuff in it, and I think I found it really meant something to me that people were able to read it and feel like they weren't the only people in the world, or they weren't the only person in the world to have had those kind of thoughts and feelings. So I just decided at that point that anything that I felt was good enough creatively to put on a stage or to be published or shared, performed, that I would do that. So I do write stuff for myself still now, but not very often. I don't feel the need very often. I feel that it's what happened and the way it happened has really helped shape me, as all experiences do, but has really enabled me to, I suppose, embrace my creativity and just run with it, really. It's like a part of, I suppose, why I went into psychiatric nursing. It's me doing what I did as a psychiatric nurse that then came to an end because of what happened to me. But I always really enjoyed that, and it is like, when people say there's no selfless act, it's because it makes me feel good. I like doing work and doing projects and sharing stuff that actually helps other people feel valuable and validated and understood, because that gives me a nice feeling. So it's, in that sense, it's like not an altruistic that I'm going to do this even though it's not really my thing. It's because I do enjoy it. I get a lot out of doing all this. If anybody had told me back in 2000 when I left that I would be doing what I'm doing now, then I wouldn't have been able to see that. I wouldn't have believed that would ever happen, because I felt about that big when I left. And I certainly for many years didn't feel like, I'd look back and think, was I actually the person who was the head nurse in this regional unit? Because I didn't feel like that I was a powerful, I don't know if powerful is the right word, but an empowered enough, strong enough person to have actually ever done that. I had, I think, what happened to me, being taken through dark places can actually be a very freeing thing, because I wouldn't be doing this now. I'd probably be chugging along quite happily as a psychiatric nurse, but I certainly don't think I'd be being creative. So, what happened actually opened all sorts of doors for me. So.
And what about relaxation?
I tend to work all the time.
When you see something that you think she is doing wrong, that's not helping the situation, I want you to call out stop. You tell who you think can change their attitude, you tell them what to do, and then they'll rerun that. And let's get to a point where it makes it a nicer little experience for everybody.
I'll not just say goodbye to my friend because she's helping me sort my diet. See, so.
Quickly, put the phone down.
Right. Apparently, Roz, I've got to go. Right, okay.
I said quickly.
I'll speak to you later then. Bye then. Bye, 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 bye. Yes. Right, so we need a chair and eye contact.
You need a chair next to
Okay.
you, so that
You
the
move the
person
chair then, go on.
at the same level in terms of talking.
Right, okay.
Okay. And you need to stop eating. You're at work. Okay.
I've had my breakfast.
Your attitude is disrespectful. Very disrespectful.
Disrespectful. In what way is it disrespectful?
You're ignoring the needs of the person that's coming to see you, and your attitude is that you've got a couldn't care less attitude.
Okay, what should she do?
She needs to actually put the banana down and stop eating and pay attention to the person that's coming.
Okay, well, my blood sugars were really low, see, and it makes me a bit ratty, so can I have one more
Do
bite?
that another time.
Okay.
Don't pass out. You will get
Okay. I'll have to get up earlier to have breakfast next time, won't I? Right. Okay, sit down then.
It's the first point of contact, so friendliness, maybe a smile, welcome them, and
A
then...
smile?
I know, right?
Right,
Try
okay.
it, it's comfortable. Just sit down and then
Hang on.
take it from there.
Smile.
There was eye contact as well.
Welcome. Eye contact. I think this gentleman had something to say, and all did you? Did you want to say something to me? See, what happens is, right, I watch the late episodes of Criminal Minds and then I'm late waking up. I don't have time for
Off
breakfast.
topic,
I
just
have...
clear your desk.
Right, okay. Right, smile, welcome, eye contact. Smile, welcome, eye contact. Yes!